This is Your Path, live, with Bishop Mark, live from Dallas Universal Life Church in Dallas, Texas.
Well, good evening, folks. Welcome to Your Path Live with Bishop Mark. I'm your host, Bishop Mark Zorn, coming to you live from Dallas, Texas, as we do, well, almost every Wednesday night. This will be our last one of the season. This is our season finale for season 3. And we've got a lot to talk about. Now, first, before we do any of that, I want to tell you this show is about you. That's why it's called Your Path. That's the whole reason it's called Your Path. What does that mean? It means I want to talk to you. I want to pray with you. I want to hear about you. I just want you to call in and let's talk. How do you do that? Well, there's a couple ways. There's a little thing going across your screen there. If you're on your phone, it's probably on the top. If you're on your computer, it's on the bottom. It says tinyurl.com/Bishop Mark. Very simple. tinyurl.com/Bishop Mark. If you're on the radio, you can use that as well. tinyurl.com/Bishop Mark. Very simple. If you're in our green room, we can chat in just a few minutes. And look, folks, I'm easy to talk to. Anything you want to talk about, that's what I'm here to do. Your faith, your life, your Christianity, your relationships, your parents, your kids, your job, your school, whatever it is, that's what I'm here for. So that being said, we have a lot to talk about today. And I want to tell you this. Don't hesitate to interrupt me. I've got a topic that I'm going through, but that's okay. That's the whole idea. It's just for you. So the topic is just there for us to talk about when nobody else wants to talk to me on the phone. So really, seriously, break in. If you want to talk about the subject we're talking about today, please break in, talk to me. I want to hear from you. Okay. You can also use that QR code if you're watching on television or if you're on your computer, the QR code or on Roku or anything else. You can watch that on the QR code, click on that QR code with your phone, just put it on camera, hold it up to it, put up a link, hit the link, and put it right there in the green room. We'll talk in just a few moments. Okay. We have a busy show today. 2 full hours of season finale for you today. Let's start with this. Again, I'm going to say good afternoon to you. And welcome to Your Path Live with Mark. Tonight is not just another Wednesday. Tonight is not just another episode. Tonight is not just another conversation that we're going to have, enjoy for a couple of hours, and then forget about before the week is over. Tonight is a moment. Tonight is a marker. Tonight is the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. Because tonight, we come to the end of season 3 of Your Path Live. And I need to tell you from the very beginning that this season finale is not going to be a sentimental stroll down memory lane. We may look back. We should look back. We need to remember where we've been, but what we have faced, what we have learned, and how far God has brought us. But we're not going to spend this entire evening staring backwards, because you cannot walk into your future while constantly looking over your shoulder. You cannot move forward while living in reverse. And you cannot begin the next chapter of your life if you keep rereading the pages that have already been written. So tonight, we're going to talk about what comes next. We're going to talk about the chapter that has not yet been written, the chapter that is still waiting for your courage, waiting for your faith, waiting for your obedience, waiting for your decision, waiting for you to finally stop saying one day and start saying today. The title of tonight's season finale is The Next Chapter. The Next Chapter. And whether you realize it or not, you are already standing at the beginning of one. Maybe your next chapter is beginning because something wonderful has happened. Maybe a new opportunity has opened. Maybe a prayer has been answered. Maybe a relationship has been started. Maybe the door you have been knocking on finally has opened. But for some of you, your next chapter is beginning because something painful has ended. A relationship ended. A job ended. A friendship ended. A dream ended. A season ended. Something you thought would last forever did not last forever. Something you thought you could depend on disappeared. Something you thought was part of God's permanent plan turned out to be temporary. And now you're standing in that uncomfortable space between what was and what will be. You are no longer where you were, but you're not yet where you are going. That space can be frightening. It can be lonely. It can be confusing. Because when one chapter closes, we do not always get to see the title of the next one immediately. Sometimes all we see is a blank page. Blank pages can be terrifying because a blank page holds possibility. It also holds uncertainty. It can become anything. And that means you have to decide what you're willing to write. You have to decide what you're willing to risk. You have to decide what you're willing to release. You have to decide whether you're going to keep repeating the same old story or finally allow God to write something new. Some people say they want a new chapter. They keep bringing every character, every conflict, every wound, every habit, and every excuse from the old chapter into the new one. Then they wonder why the story never changes. You change the calendar, you change the address, you change the job, you change the relationship, you change the church, you change the people around you, but you never changed your thinking. You never changed your choices. You never changed your boundaries. You never changed your willingness to face the truth. You never changed the part of you that kept creating the same pain in different places. A new chapter requires more than a new date. It requires a new decision. It requires a new level of honesty. It requires a new level of faith. And sometimes it requires admitting that the reason you've been stuck is not because the door will not open. It is because you're afraid to walk through it. Let me say that again. Some of you are not waiting for God. God is waiting for you. You've been praying for direction. God already told you what to do. You've been praying for confirmation, but God has already confirmed it again and again. You've been asking for a sign, but you passed 3 signs on the way to the excuse you're using now. At some point, faith has to become movement. At some point, prayer has to become action. At some point, you have to stop asking God to bless the life you refuse to change. Tonight, as we close this season, I want you to ask yourself one serious question. Am I actually ready for the next chapter, or do I simply like the idea of one? Because everybody likes the idea of a fresh start. Everybody likes the idea of healing. Everybody likes the idea of peace. Everybody likes the idea of purpose. Everybody likes the idea of becoming the person God created them to be. But are you willing to do what it takes? Are you willing to stop returning to what keeps breaking you? Are you willing to tell the truth about what is no longer working? Are you willing to walk away from people who only love you when you're weak enough to control? Are you willing to let go of the version of yourself that was built entirely around survival? Are you willing to admit that some of the things that protected you in one season are now imprisoning you in another? Because some of you learned how to survive by shutting down emotionally. That may have protected you when you were being hurt, but now you cannot understand why you cannot connect with anybody. Some of you learned how to survive by trusting no one. That may have kept you from being disappointed for a while, but now you're isolated, lonely, and suspicious of every person who tries to love you. Some of you learned how to survive by becoming the person everyone else needed you to be. You became the strong one, the dependable one, the one who never needed anything, the one who always said yes, the one who fixed everyone else's problems. But now you do not know who you are when you are not rescuing somebody. Survival got you here, but survival alone cannot take you where God is leading you next. There comes a time when you have to do more than survive. You have to live. You have to heal. You have to grow. You have to trust. You have to become. And that is what tonight is about. It's about becoming, not pretending, not performing, not proving, becoming more honest, becoming more whole, becoming more loving, becoming more courageous, becoming more willing to listen when God speaks, becoming more willing to move when God says move, becoming more willing to rest when God says rest, becoming more willing to release what God never asked you to carry forever. We often talk about finding your path, but your path is not always one straight road. Believe me, it's not. Sometimes your path changes direction. Sometimes it climbs. Sometimes it drops. Sometimes it becomes narrow. Sometimes it becomes difficult. Sometimes it leads through places you never expected to visit. Sometimes it forces you to leave behind people who said they would walk with you forever. Sometimes it asks you to travel alone for a while. But just because the road changes does not mean you have lost your path. Sometimes the change is the path. Sometimes the detour is the path. Sometimes the delay is the path. Sometimes the ending is the path. Sometimes the thing you thought ruined your life is the very thing God uses to redirect it. And I know that sounds good when you hear it spoken. It sounds spiritual. It sounds hopeful. But it does not always feel hopeful when you're living it. It does not feel hopeful when the bills are due. It does not feel hopeful when somebody walks away. Okay. Go on for just a second here. Take a quick break. We'll be right back, folks. Something.
Saving Gracie and Me. Saving Gracie and Me by Daniel Manning is a heartfelt story about a family's deep bond with their dog, Gracie. When Gracie enters their lives, the family is going through a tough time, and she brings a sense of hope and warmth to their home. As she grows, Gracie becomes more than just a pet. She's a source of comfort and joy, especially for the mother who is facing illness. Gracie's love and loyalty inspire the family to keep going, even in their darkest moments. The story shows how the love of a dog can heal, strengthen, and bring a family closer together.
Pick up your copy of Saving Gracie and Me by Daniel Manning today. It's available online or in your favorite bookstore. Choose ebook, soft, or hardcover. Saving Gracie and Me by Daniel Manning.
A story of unconditional love, inspired healing, resilience, and hope.
Experience this unforgettable, emotional journey today.
Okay. Never a dull moment, right? Okay, let me turn that down. It's my echo back here. Let's see. There we go. Never a dull moment here, live on television. You never know what's going to happen. All right. Let's get back to where we were. I apologize about that. Sometimes that happens. All right. Let's go back to this where we're talking about let's back this up just a little bit so I can get back to where we were here. Your path is not always one straight road. Sometimes your path changes direction. Sometimes it climbs, sometimes it drops, sometimes it becomes narrow, sometimes it becomes difficult. Sometimes it leads to places you never expected to visit. Sometimes it forces you to leave behind people who said they would walk with you forever. Sometimes it asks you to travel alone for a while, but just because the road changes does not mean you have lost your path. Sometimes the path is the change. Sometimes the detour is the path. Sometimes the delay is the path. Sometimes the ending is the path. Sometimes the thing that you thought ruined your life is the very thing that God uses to redirect it. And I know that sounds good when you hear it spoken, but it sounds spiritual. It sounds hopeful, but it does not always feel hopeful when you're living it. It does not feel hopeful when the bills are due. It does not feel hopeful when somebody you love walks away. It does not feel hopeful when your body is tired. It does not feel hopeful when your heart is broken. It does not feel hopeful when you prayed and nothing changed. It does not feel hopeful when you did the right thing and still suffered. That is where faith becomes real. Faith is not pretending that everything is fine. Faith is not denying pain. Faith is not smiling while your life is falling apart and telling everybody that you're blessed and highly favored. Faith is telling the truth about the pain while still believing the pain does not get the final word. Faith says, this hurt me, but it will not define me. Faith says, I lost something, but I have not lost God. Faith says, I do not understand this chapter, but I trust the author. Faith says, I do not know what happens next, but I know I am walking into it, not walking into it alone. That is the kind of faith we need for the next chapter. Not decorative faith, not Sunday only faith, not faith that only works when the lights are on, the music is playing, and everybody around you is saying amen. We need faith that works at 3:00 in the morning, faith that works in the waiting room, faith that works in the unemployment line, faith that works in grief, faith that works in recovery, faith that works when you feel forgotten, faith that works when you have to start over with less than you had before, faith that says, God, I'm scared, but I'm still moving. Some of you have confused fear with a stop sign. You think that because you're afraid, you must not be ready. You think because you're nervous, God must not be calling you. Because the next step feels uncertain, you should say exactly where you are. But courage does not mean you are not afraid. Courage means fear no longer gets to make the decision. You may be afraid and still move. You may be uncertain and still obey. You may have questions and still take the next step. You do not need to know the whole story. You only need enough faith for the next sentence. You do not need the entire map. You only need enough light for the next step. And I believe that is where many of us are tonight. We're asking God to show us everything. We want the whole plan. We want every detail. We want the guarantee. We want to know how it ends before we're willing to begin. But that is not faith. That is control. And control is one of the hardest things to surrender because control makes us feel safe. Even when the situation is unhealthy, familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar possibility. At least you know what to expect from the old pain. At least you know how the old disappointment works. At least you know how to survive the old dysfunction. The next chapter asks you to step into something you cannot predict. And that can feel dangerous. But you have to understand something. The familiar is not always safe. The familiar is simply familiar. Some of you have stayed in places that are slowly destroying you because at least you know the routine. You know when the argument is coming. You know when the apology is coming. You know when the promise is coming. You know when the disappointment is coming. And because you recognize the pattern, you call it stability. That is not stability. That is repetition. And repetition is not the same as peace. Tonight, we're going to confront some patterns. We're going to talk about what this season has taught us. We're going to talk about the things you need to leave behind. We're going to talk about the things you need to carry forward. We're going to talk about what you should actually do during this summer break. Not just what you should think about, not just what you should pray about, what you should do. Because transformation requires participation. You cannot sit still and expect your life to become something different. God can open the door. God can provide the opportunity. God can send the people. God can give the strength. God can offer the grace. But you still have to get up. You still have to walk. You still have to say yes. You still have to make the call. You still have to apply. You still have to apologize. You still have to forgive. You still have to set the boundary. You still have to ask for help. You still have to go to the meeting. You still have to take the medication. You still have to keep the appointment. You still have to tell the truth. You still have to do your part. There are people watching tonight who are waiting for a miracle while ignoring the instruction attached to it. You want healing, but you refuse to address the wound. You want peace, but you keep inviting chaos back into your life. You want financial stability, but you will not look at where the money is going. You want healthy relationships, but you keep choosing people who confirm your worst beliefs about yourself. You want purpose, but you refuse to be consistent. You want change, but you keep protecting the habits that prevent it. The next chapter will require cooperation, you and God, grace and responsibility, prayer and movement, faith and work. Tonight is a night of honesty. It is a night to stop hiding behind spiritual language. It is a night to stop pretending you are confused when you are actually afraid. It is a night to stop pretending you are waiting when you're actually avoiding. It is a night to stop pretending you have no choice. And the truth is, you don't like the choices that are available. You may not have every option you want, but you have a next step, and the next step matters. One conversation can change your life. One decision can change your direction. One boundary can break a cycle. One act of obedience can open a door. One moment of truth can begin a lifetime of healing. Never underestimate what God can do with one honest decision. You do not have to fix your entire life tonight. You don't have to have every answer tonight. You don't have to know exactly who you will become, but you need to decide whether you are willing to become. That is the question. Are you willing? Are you willing to grow beyond the person who you have been? Are you willing to release the story that says you will always be this way? Are you willing to stop using your past as evidence against your future? Are you willing to believe that God can still do something meaningful with your life? Because some of you have disqualified yourselves. You look at your mistakes. You look at your years lost. You look at the damage you caused. You look at the opportunities you missed. You look at the people you hurt. You look at the times you failed. And you say, maybe God could have used me once, but not now. Who told you that? Who told you grace had an expiration date? Who told you purpose only belonged to people who got everything right the first time? Who told you God could only use clean stories? The Bible is filled with people whose stories were complicated, people who failed, people who ran, people who doubted, people who lied, people who made impulsive decisions, people who had anger, people who had shame, people who thought they were too old, people who thought they were too young, people who believed that their past had ruined their future. And yet God kept writing. That is what grace does. Grace keeps writing. When you think the story is over, grace turns the page. When you think the damage is permanent, grace begins rebuilding. When you think there's nothing left, grace creates from what remains. When you think you are disqualified, grace reminds you that God has never been limited by your resume. The next chapter is not about pretending the old chapter never happened. It happened. The pain was real. The mistakes were real. The consequences may still be real. But the old chapter does not get to dictate every chapter that follows. Your past may explain you. It does not have to imprison you. Your past may have shaped you, but it does not have to control you. Your past may be part of your testimony, but it does not have to remain your identity. You are allowed to become someone new. You are allowed to heal. You're allowed to outgrow old roles. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to admit that what once worked no longer works. You're allowed to say, I cannot keep living this way. Maybe tonight is the night you finally say it. Not dramatically, not for attention, not just as just another promise you make and then break by the next week, but quietly, honestly, firmly. I cannot keep living this way. I cannot keep carrying this. I cannot keep going back. I cannot keep abandoning myself. I cannot keep ignoring God. I cannot keep asking for a new life while repeating the same decisions. That is where the next chapter begins. Not with fireworks, not with applause, not with some perfect emotional moment. It begins with truth. And tonight, before we go any further, I want you to be honest with yourself. What chapter are you closing? What chapter needs to close? What have you been trying to keep alive long after God told you to let it go? What identity are you still carrying that no longer belongs to you? What pain have you turned into a permanent address? What excuse have you used so often that it now sounds like fact? What are you afraid will happen if you finally move forward? And what are you afraid will happen if you don't? Because staying where you are is also a decision. Doing nothing is also a choice. Avoiding the next step does not freeze time. Life keeps moving. Opportunities move. People move. Seasons move. And sometimes the greatest pain comes not from choosing wrongly, but from refusing to choose at all. Tonight, we're going to choose. We're going to choose honesty. We're going to choose courage. We're going to choose movement. We're going to choose faith. We're going to choose to believe that God is not finished. Not with this program, not with this ministry, not with this church, not with me, and not with you. Season 3 may be ending, but the message is not ending. The mission is not ending. This is not goodbye. This is preparation. This is a pause. This is a breath. This is a chance to take everything we have discussed, everything we've learned, everything that has challenged us, and actually live it. Because what good is a season of conversation if nothing changes when the cameras go off? What good is inspiration if it never becomes action? What good is hearing the truth if you refuse to apply it? This summer break is not supposed to be an escape from growth. It's an opportunity for growth. It's time to test what you've learned. Time to discover whether these were simple words you enjoyed hearing or truths you're willing to live. And when we return, the question will not simply be, did you miss the show? The question will be, what did you do with your time? What did you change? What did you confront? What did you begin? What did you end? What did you learn about yourself? What did you finally surrender to God? What chapter did you begin writing? So tonight, I want you to stay with me. Do not watch this casually. Do not let this become background noise. Do not half listen while scrolling through your phone. Give yourself this time. Give God this time, because something may be said tonight that you have needed to hear for years. Something may confront you. Something may encourage you. Something may make you uncomfortable. Something may require a decision. And that decision may be the first line of your next chapter. Season 3 has brought us through conversations about faith, fear, love, forgiveness, boundaries, purpose, pain, healing, identity, and what it means to walk your own path with God. Tonight, we bring it together. Tonight, we ask the question underneath every other question. What are you going to do now? not tomorrow, not when the timing is perfect, not when everyone understands, not when you're no longer afraid, not when the money appears, not when somebody gives you permission. What are you going to do now? Because your next chapter is waiting, and it will not write itself. The next section will look back at the major lessons of season 3 and connect them directly to the choices viewers must make now. That's you, the viewers. Okay, that was section 2. Now let's move on to section 1, probably. That was section 2. Now let's go to section 2. Looking back, what season 3 taught us. We're going to go right into this, folks. We took our break earlier. So don't forget to call in, folks. There's that scrolling words across the screen. Aren't they scrolling there for no reason? I want to hear from you, please. Okay, before we can move fully into the next chapter, we need to take a moment and look honestly at the chapter we're closing. Not because we're trying to live in the past, not because we're trying to repeat everything that has already been said, but because wisdom requires reflection. If you never stop to consider what a season taught you, you may survive it without ever growing from it. You may make it through the storm and still carry the same fear into the sunshine. You may leave the relationship and still repeat the same pattern with somebody new. You may overcome the crisis and still think the same way you thought before it happened. You may hear lesson after lesson, week after week, and still walk away unchanged. So before we turn the page, we need to ask, what did this season actually teach us? What truths did we hear that we must refuse to forget? What did God reveal? What did we learn about faith? What did we learn about pain? What did we learn about ourselves? What did we learn about the way we treat other people? Perhaps most importantly, what did we learn that now requires action? Because knowledge without action becomes spiritual clutter. It fills your mind, but never changes your life. You can collect sermons, you can collect quotes, you can collect Bible verses, you can collect inspirational videos, you can underline half the Bible, for God's sake. You can save every powerful sentence you see online. But if none of it changes the way you live, then it has become decoration. Truth was never meant to decorate your life. Truth was meant to transform it. One of the greatest lessons of this season has been that your path belongs to you and God. Other people may advise you. Other people may support you. Other people may pray with you. Other people may warn you. Other people may walk beside you. But they cannot walk your path for you. And you cannot walk theirs. That sounds simple. But many people spend their entire lives trying to live according to somebody else's expectations. They choose a career because somebody told them it was respectable. They stay in a relationship because leaving would disappoint the family. They hide who they are because somebody taught them that honesty would make them unacceptable. They remain silent because speaking the truth might make other people uncomfortable. They spend years building a life that looks good from the outside and feels empty on the inside. Then one day they wake up and realize they've been a supporting character in everybody else's story. They know what everyone else expects. They know what everyone else needs. They know what everyone else believes. But they no longer know themselves. They no longer know what brings them peace. They no longer know what they believe. They no longer know what God has placed within them. They become strangers to their own souls. This season has reminded us again and again that you were not created to become a copy of somebody else. You were not created to satisfy every opinion. You were not created to fit into every box. You were not created to spend your one life begging people to approve of the person God already knows completely. You are responsible for listening. You're responsible for praying. You're responsible for examining your heart. You're responsible for learning. You're responsible for correcting yourself when you are wrong. You're responsible for seeking wisdom. But ultimately, your path is between you and God. And that means that you have to stop handing strangers the pen and allowing them to write your life. Some of you have allowed people who do not even understand you to define you. People who only know one mistake, who only know one rumor, people who only know the version of you that existed 10 years ago, people who have never seen the private battles you fought, people who were not there when you cried, people who were not there when you prayed, people who were not there when you got back up, and yet you've allowed their judgment to become louder than the voice of God. The season taught us that you must stop allowing people with limited information to issue permanent verdicts over your life. They do not know the whole story. And even when they do know the whole story, they still are not God. Another major lesson of this season has been that faith is not passive. Faith is not sitting still while waiting for God to do everything. Faith is not avoiding responsibility. Faith is not refusing to make a decision and calling it patience. Faith is not ignoring reality. Faith is not magical thinking. Faith is not pretending that effort does not matter. True faith moves. True faith responds. True faith takes the next step even when the entire path is not visible. Noah had to build. Abraham had to leave. Moses had to return. The Israelites had to walk. David had to face Goliath. Peter had to step out of the boat. The disciples had to leave their nets. The people Jesus healed were often told to rise, stretch, wash, go, show themselves, or take up their mat. There was movement connected to the miracle. There was participation connected to the promise. There was obedience connected to the outcome. And some of us have spent far too long asking God to move while refusing to move ourselves. We pray for a better job but never apply. We pray for healing but refuse to help. We pray for peace but continue feeding conflict. We pray for stronger relationships while refusing to communicate. We pray for purpose while wasting every opportunity to serve. We pray for change while defending every habit keeping us stuck. At some point, faith must put on shoes. At some point, faith must make the phone call. At some point, faith must fill out the application. At some point, faith must attend the meeting. At some point, faith must say, I need help. At some point, faith must say, I was wrong. At some point, faith must walk away. At some point, faith must begin again. This season taught us that God does not always remove the challenge, but God will meet us within it. There are people who believe that if they have enough faith, nothing painful should happen. They believe that suffering means they failed. They believe that hardship means God abandoned them. They believe that unanswered prayers means God was not listening. But life does not support that idea. Scripture does not support that idea. And our own experience does not support that idea. Good people suffer. Faithful people suffer. Loving people grieve. People who pray still receive bad news. People who trust God still face uncertainty. People who do not do the right thing can still be betrayed. People who do the right thing can still be betrayed. People who are trying to heal can still have difficult days. The presence of struggle does not prove the absence of God. Sometimes the greatest evidence of God's presence is not that the fire disappeared. It's just the fire did not destroy you. You may have gone through something that changed you, something that humbled you, something that wounded you, something that forced you to begin again. You may still have questions about why it happened. You may never receive a complete answer. That's just the truth. But you are still here. You're still breathing. You're capable of loving. You're capable of learning. You're still capable of becoming. And that matters. You did not make it through because you were never weak. You made it through because weakness was not the end of your story. You did not make it through because you were never broke. You never broke. You made it through because brokenness was not beyond the reach of grace. This season taught us that healing is not always a straight line. Some days you feel stronger. Some days you feel as though you have gone backwards. Some days the memory does not hurt as much. Some day, one song, one place, one photograph, one sentence brings everything back. Some days you forgive. Some days you feel angry all over again. Some days you are confident. Some days you question everything. That does not mean healing is not happening. Healing is not measured by whether you ever feel pain again. Healing is measured by whether the pain still controls your life. You may remember without returning. You may grieve without becoming hopeless. You may feel anger without allowing anger to make your decisions. You may miss someone and still know they do not belong in your life. You may have a difficult day without declaring that all your progress is gone. One bad day does not erase months of growth. One moment of weakness does not mean you are back at the beginning. One memory does not have the power to undo everything God has rebuilt. Stop condemning yourself for being human. Stop treating every difficult emotion as evidence that you have failed. Feelings are real, but they are not always instructions. You can feel lonely and still not call the person who harmed you. You can feel afraid and still take the step. You can feel angry and still choose not to retaliate. You can still feel angry. You can feel tired and still remember your purpose. You can feel uncertain and still remain faithful. Another lesson of this season has been that forgiveness and access are not the same thing. This is something many people desperately needed to hear. You can forgive someone and still have boundaries. You can release bitterness and still refuse to return to abuse. You can wish someone well and still understand that they are not safe for you. You can pray for someone from a distance. You can love someone without allowing them to continue damaging your life. Forgiveness is not pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness is not erasing consequences. Forgiveness is not giving people unlimited opportunities to repeat the same behavior. Forgiveness is not surrendering your dignity. Forgiveness is not abandoning wisdom. Sometimes forgiveness means releasing your desire for revenge while also closing the door. Sometimes forgiveness means saying, I'm not going to hate you, but I'm also not going to continue allowing this. Some people use religion to pressure others into remaining in harmful situations. They say, you have to forgive. What they often mean is, you have to act as though nothing happened. So I do not have to change. That is not forgiveness. That is manipulation. True reconciliation requires more than an apology. It requires truth. It requires accountability. It requires changed behavior. It requires time. It requires rebuilding trust. And trust is not automatically restored because someone said, I'm sorry. An apology without change is simply a pause in the pattern. This season taught us that boundaries are not hatred. Boundaries are not revenge. Boundaries are not punishment. Healthy boundaries are a declaration that love does not require self-destruction. And some of you have spent years believing that being a good person meant allowing everyone unlimited access to you. You thought love meant always saying yes. You thought kindness meant never disappointing anyone. You thought faith meant tolerating whatever people choose to do. But constantly sacrificing your well-being to preserve somebody else's comfort is not holiness. It is self-abandonment. You are allowed to say no. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to protect your peace. You're allowed to leave the conversation. You're allowed to stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You're allowed to refuse disrespect. You're allowed to decide that a relationship cannot continue in its current form. And you do not need everyone to agree with your boundary for your boundary to be valid. Another lesson we have returned to is that love must be demonstrated. Love is not just a word. Love is not just a feeling. Love is not just something you claim. Love becomes visible through action. You can say you love people, but how do you treat them? You can say you love God, but how do you treat the people God created? You can say you believe in compassion, but what happens when compassion costs you time? You can say everyone is welcome, but how do you respond when someone different actually walks through the door? You can say you support the hurting, but do you listen to them or lecture them? You can say you forgive, but do you keep using someone's past as a weapon? You can say you care, but do you ever show up? Words matter, but words without action eventually become noise. The world has heard enough people preach love while practicing cruelty. The world has heard enough people preach grace while enforcing shame. The world has heard enough people talk about Jesus while treating human beings as disposable. We do not need loud declarations of love. We need clearer demonstrations of love. Love feeds people. Love listens. Love protects. Love tells the truth. Love creates room. Love challenges injustice. Love sits beside the grieving. Love helps someone begin again. Love does not require people to become identical to us before we decide they deserve dignity. This season has reminded us that you can disagree with someone without denying their humanity. We have forgotten how to do that. We've confused disagreement with permission to destroy. We've confused conviction with cruelty. We've confused boldness with arrogance. We have confused righteousness with humiliation. You can believe strongly without becoming hateful. You can stand for something without standing on someone. You can correct without shaming. You can speak truth without enjoying another person's pain. And if your faith makes you less compassionate, less patient, less humble, and more eager to condemn, then you need to examine what you're calling faith. Jesus did not need to dehumanize people in order to tell the truth, and neither do we. Another major lesson has been that your identity cannot depend entirely on what you do for other people. Many people have built their entire identity around being needed. They are the helper, the caregiver, the rescuer, the provider, the problem solver, the person everyone calls when something goes wrong. And there is nothing wrong with helping others. There's nothing wrong with serving. There's nothing wrong with being dependable. But when your worth depends on being needed, you may begin creating relationships where people never grow because their dependence makes you feel valuable. You may exhaust yourself trying to prove your importance. You may feel guilty whenever you rest. You may become resentful because everyone takes from you, even though you trained them to believe that you would always say yes. You may not know who you are when nobody needs saving. This season asked a difficult question. Who are you when you're not performing a role for someone else? Who are you when you are not solving a crisis? Who are you when you're not preaching? Who are you when you're not working? Who are you when you're not entertaining? Who are you when you're not taking care of everyone? Do you believe you still have value when you're resting? Do you believe you're still worthy when you're not producing? Do you believe God still loves you when you have nothing impressive to offer? Your worth is not measured by your usefulness. You're not a machine. You're not a resource everyone else is entitled to consume. You are a human being. You need rest. You need support. You need care. You need space. You need people who ask you how you're doing and genuinely want to hear the answer. This season taught us that rest is not laziness. Rest is necessary. Even Jesus withdrew. Even Jesus stepped away from the crowd. Even Jesus slept. Even Jesus understood that constant availability is not the same as faithfulness. Some of you are spiritually exhausted, emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted, and mentally exhausted. Yet you keep pushing because you're afraid that if you stop, everything will collapse. And maybe that is the problem. Maybe you have built a life that only functions when you are constantly overextending yourself. Maybe the system needs to change. Maybe everyone around you needs to learn that you are not available every second. Maybe some responsibilities need to be shared. Maybe some commitments need to end. Maybe some people need to hear the word no. Rest is not abandoning your calling. Rest helps you remain capable of answering it. This summer break is not an apology. It is not surrender. It is not a sign that the mission is ended. It is an intentional pause, a chance to breathe, a chance to listen, a chance to reflect, a chance to return stronger, clearer, and more focused. And some of you watching need to give yourselves permission to pause as well. You do not have to earn rest by collapsing first. You don't have to wait until your body forces you to stop. You don't have to feel guilty for needing recovery. Another truth from this season is that shame does not produce lasting transformation. People may change temporarily because they are ashamed. They may hide. They may perform. They may say what others want to hear. But shame does not heal the root. Shame teaches people to conceal. Grace teaches people to confront. Shame says, you are your worst mistake. Grace says, you made a mistake, and now we're going to deal honestly with it. Shame says, hide. Grace says, come into the light. Shame says, you are beyond redemption. Grace says, take responsibility and begin again. There's a difference between conviction and shame. Conviction points to what needs to change. Shame attacks your entire identity. Conviction says, that choice was wrong. Shame says, you are worthless. Conviction opens the door to repentance. Shame convinces you there is no point in trying. God may challenge you. God may correct you. God may ask you to confront painful truth, but God does not need to destroy your sense of worth in order to help you grow. You are more than your addiction. You are more than your divorce. You are more than your diagnosis. You are more than your arrest. You are more than your failure. You are more than the worst thing that someone said about you. You are worth more. You are more than the worst thing you ever did. You are not excused for responsibility, but you are not excluded from grace. This season taught us that the past must be faced, but it cannot remain in control. Ignoring the past does not heal it. Pretending it did not happen does not remove its influence. Pain that is not addressed often appears in places where it does not belong. It appears in your anger. It appears in your fear. It appears in your relationships. It appears in your inability to trust. It appears in your ways you react to small things. It appears in the people you choose. It appears in the way you sabotage good opportunities. You may think that you left the past behind, but if it still controls your reactions, it came with you. Facing the past does not mean living there. It means telling the truth about telling the truth about it so that it no longer controls you from the shadows. It means acknowledging what happened. It means grieving what was lost. It means accepting what cannot change. It means accepting responsibility for your part. It means refusing responsibility for what never was yours. It means seeking help when the burden is too heavy to process alone. And there is no shame in seeking help. Prayer is powerful. Faith is powerful. Community is powerful. And so are counseling, treatment, recovery programs, support groups, medication, and trained professionals. All of those are given by God, folks. God is not offended when you use the resources available to help you heal. He gave them to you. Sometimes the answer to prayer arrives through another human being. Sometimes it arrives through a doctor. Sometimes it arrives through a therapist. Sometimes it arrives through a meeting. Sometimes it arrives through a friend who refuses to let you disappear. Another lesson of this season has been that comparison will make you miserable. You look at someone else's life and assume they are ahead. You look at their success, their home, their relationship, their appearance, their ministry, their career, their audience, their money, their opportunities, and you compare their visible results to your private struggle. But you do not know their full story. You don't know what it cost. You don't know what they're carrying. You don't know what happens when the camera is off. And even if their life is exactly as wonderful as it appears, it is still their life. Their timing is not your timing. Their assignment is not your assignment. Their path is simply not your path. Comparison can cause you to despise every season, the very season that is preparing you. Hold on a second. Did you lock Dexter outside? You sure? Because the doggy door is down. He was out trying to get in. Would you mind checking for me, please? I don't know where he is. Sorry about that, folks. I heard something at the door. I thought maybe it was the dog trying to get in. Okay, their assignment is not your assignment. Their path is not your path. Comparison can cause you to despise the very season that is preparing you. You become so focused on somebody else's harvest that you neglect your own field. You become so focused on how quickly they moved that you fail to notice how far you have come. You become so focused on what you focus on what you do not have that you are stop appreciating what is already in your hands. Your life does not have to look like someone else's life to have meaning. Your calling does not have to be public to be important. Your progress does not have to be, not to impress anyone to be real. Another lesson is that you do not have to understand everything in order to move forward. Some people remain stuck because they believe clarity must come before action. They want every question answered. They want every risk removed. They want every detail guaranteed. But many times, clarity comes through movement. You learn by taking the step. You discover through participation. You understand more after you begin than you could while standing still. You may not know whether the new opportunity will last. You may not know whether the relationship will work. You may not know whether the business will succeed. You may not know exactly where the new road leads. But sometimes the only way to find out is to move. You can pray. You can prepare. You can seek wisdom. You can consider the risks. But eventually you must decide. Indecision can become its own form of disobedience. There are moments when refusing to choose is still a choice. And while you wait for perfect certainty, the opportunity may pass. This season taught us that not every ending is a failure. Sometimes things end because they completed their purpose. Sometimes people were meant to walk with you for a season and not forever. Some opportunities taught you what you needed to learn. Some relationships revealed what still needed healing. Some doors closed because your path was changing. Some chapters were never supposed to become the entire book. We often judge success by permanence. If it lasted, we call it successful. If it ended, we call it failure. But that is not always true. A season can be meaningful even if it ends. A relationship can teach you something even if it does not last. A job can prepare you for the next one. A difficult experience can reveal strength you do not know you possessed. The fact that something ended does not mean it had no value. And the fact that you are sad does not mean ending it was wrong. You can grieve something and still know it needed to end. You can miss somebody and still know you cannot return. You can honor what was and still move toward what is next. That is maturity. Another truth is that you must learn to recognize the difference between peace and comfort. Comfort says, stay where everything is familiar. Peace says, this may be difficult, but it is right. Comfort avoids conflict at any cost. Peace sometimes requires a hard conversation. Comfort says yes because it is afraid of disappointing people. Peace says no because continuing would destroy you. Comfort stays silent. Peace tells the truth. Comfort repeats the pattern. Peace breaks it. Do not assume that the easiest choice is the most peaceful one. Sometimes the right choice is deeply uncomfortable. Sometimes obedience disrupts everything. Sometimes healing requires facing what you have avoided. Sometimes peace comes after the difficult decision, not before it. And perhaps one of the most important lessons of this entire season is this: God is not finished with you. You may be tired. You may be disappointed. You may be starting over. You may be living with consequences. You may be carrying grief. You may feel behind. But you may wonder whether your greatest opportunities have already passed. But as long as you're here, there's still possibility. There's still something to learn. There's still someone to love. There's still something to offer. There's still purpose for your presence. Your purpose may change. Your role may change. Your methods may change. Your strength may change. But your life is not meaningless because it looks different from what you expected. God can work through changed plans. God can work through limitations. God can work through recovery. God can work through old age. God can work through a new beginning. God can work through what remains. You may not have everything you once had, but what remains can still be blessed. What remains can still serve. What remains can still love. What remains can still become the foundation of the next chapter. So as we look back over season 3, I do not want you simply to remember your favorite episode. I do not want you to simply remember a powerful phrase. I want you to identify the lesson God was trying to teach you. What truth kept returning? What message made you uncomfortable? What subject stayed with you after the program ended? What did you hear that you knew was meant for you? And what have you done with it? Because hearing the lesson is not the same as learning the lesson. You know you have learned it when your behavior changes. You know you have learned it when you stop returning to the same destruction. You know you've learned it when you respond differently. You know you've learned it when the old temptation arrives and you choose another way. You know you've learned it when you finally set the boundary. You know you've learned it when you ask for help. You know you've learned it when you stop apologizing for existing. You know you've learned it when you release the need to control everything. You know you've learned it when your faith becomes visible in your choices. So tonight, ask yourself, what was my greatest lesson this season? What do I need to forgive? What is it? What was it that God, was it that I needed, was it that I needed to stop going back? What is it that, was it that I needed to stop going back? Was it that I needed to speak? Was it that I needed to listen? Was it that I needed to rest? Was it that I needed to take responsibility? Was it that I needed to stop blaming myself for what someone else did? Was it that I needed to trust God? Was it I needed to trust myself again? Was it I needed to let go? Was it I needed to begin? Don't let the season end without answering that question, because the next chapter will test whether you actually learned what this chapter was trying to teach you. Life has a way of repeating lessons we refuse to learn. The names change, the places change, the details change, but the pattern remains. And we say, why does this keep happening to me? Well, sometimes it keeps happening because the lesson has not yet changed you. That is not always the answer. Not every hardship is your fault. Not every struggle is a lesson you caused. But when the same pattern appears again and again, honesty requires us to examine our own choices. What are you tolerating? What are you ignoring? What are you repeating? What warning signs do you keep explaining away? What truth do you already know but refuse to accept? You cannot begin a genuinely new chapter while remaining loyal to the pattern that ruined the last one. Something must change. In the next section, we're going to talk directly about that change. We're going to talk about what must be left behind, not theoretically, not vaguely. We're going to name it, because you cannot carry everything into the next chapter. Some things belong to the season that is ending. Some habits must remain here. Some lies must remain here. Some relationships may need to remain here. Some fears must remain here. Some versions of you must remain here. You cannot receive everything God is offering while refusing to release anything you are holding. The next chapter requires room, and it's time to decide what no longer gets to come with you. But before we go there, we are going to take a break. So hey, folks, don't forget to call in. I know I'm talking a lot, and there's a lot here, but there's the scrolling right across your screen there. Just give me a buzz. Let's talk. And for those of you on the radio, it's tinyurl.com/Bishop Mark. tinyurl.com/Bishop Mark. That's how you get through. Okay. Take a quick break, folks. We'll be right back. There might be some dead air on the radio side, folks. I apologize for that, but don't worry. We'll come in right back. Okay.
The Zoo Radio Network exists for one reason: to reach people where they are with music, conversation, and truth that still matters. In a world full of noise, the Zoo is a place for connection, reflection, encouragement, and real talk about faith, life, and purpose. Hi, I'm Sean, and I want to tell you a little more about who the Zoo Radio Network is. We are not backed by corporations. We are not driven by profit. We are powered by people. Your support keeps the Zoo broadcasting not only great Christian music, but also modern pop, classical, country, and live programming that speaks to real life. It allows us to produce shows like Your Path Live with Bishop Mark, stream worship services, amplify unheard voices, and remain accessible to anyone who needs hope. No paywall, no barriers. So, why does your support matter? Running a radio network takes more than passion. It takes broadcasting and streaming infrastructure, music licensing and royalties, studio equipment and technical support, website hosting and digital platforms, outreach, promotion, and community programming. Every dollar given goes directly into keeping the Zoo strong, stable, and growing. This is more than radio. The Zoo is ministry without walls. It reaches the lonely at night. It reaches the seeker who won't walk into a church. It reaches the believer who needs to be reminded they're not alone. When you give, you are not just funding a station. You are investing in lives being touched every single day. How can you help? We have a program designed so that all can give without breaking the bank. One-time gift, make an immediate impact. Monthly partner, become part of the backbone of the Zoo. Sponsor a program or hour of airtime. Dedicate it in honor or memory of someone meaningful. No gift is too small. Every gift moves the mission forward. Stand with us. Keep the signal alive. If the Zoo has encouraged you, challenged you, comforted you, or helped you feel connected, now is your chance to give back. Support the Zoo Radio Network today and help us continue broadcasting hope, truth, and real faith into a world that desperately needs it. Give, share, be part of the voice. Visit www.yourdallas.church and go to the Donate tab to make your tax-deductible donation today. Thank you from all of us at the Zoo Radio Network.
Saving Gracie and Me by Daniel Manning is a heartfelt story about a family's deep bond with their dog, Gracie. When Gracie enters their lives, the family is going through a tough time, and she brings a sense of hope and warmth to their home. As she grows, Gracie becomes more than just a pet. She's a source of comfort and joy, especially for the mother who is facing illness. Gracie's love and loyalty inspire the family to keep going, even in their darkest moments. The story shows how the love of a dog can heal, strengthen, and bring a family closer together.
Pick up your copy of Saving Gracie and Me by Daniel Manning today. It's available online or in your favorite bookstore. Choose ebook, soft, or hardcover. Saving Gracie and Me by Daniel Manning.
A story of unconditional love, inspired healing, resilience, and hope.
Experience this unforgettable, emotional journey today.
Okay. Welcome back, folks. We had a little disaster kind of avoided. Our banner behind us has seen better days, and we're going to have to find a new stand for it for next season, but it's just kind of holding on right now for the rest of the season. So if it falls again, you'll know why, because it just fell on us. So hopefully it won't fall again. I'm going to try not to bump into it too much. And for a dull moment. Okay. Take a breath. What you must leave behind. Now, if you're serious about beginning the next chapter, then you must be equally serious about what cannot come with you. There may be people, excuse me. That is where many people struggle. They want the new life. They want the new beginning. They want the healing. They want the peace. They want the opportunity. They want the stronger faith. They want the better relationships. But they also want to keep every old habit, every old excuse, every old attachment, every old resentment, and every old pattern that made the new life necessary in the first place. You cannot keep everything and still become someone new. Growth requires release. Healing requires release. Maturity requires release. Faith requires release. There are things you had to carry in one season that you cannot continue carrying into the next. There are survival habits that helped you endure but will now prevent you from living. There are beliefs you inherited that no longer align with the truth. There are relationships that once felt necessary but now keep you small. There are fears that once protected you but now control you. There are identities built around pain that no longer represent who you are becoming. And tonight, we have to be honest enough to name them. The first thing some of you must leave behind is the belief that your past has the authority to determine your future. Your past matters. Your past has consequences. Your past may have shaped the way you see yourself. It may have influenced the way you trust, the way you love, the way you respond, the way you defend yourself, the way you expect people to treat you. But your past is not God. It does not have the final word. Your history can explain your behavior. But your history may explain your behavior. I'm sorry, that's where I was. But it cannot excuse every choice forever. There comes a time when you must stop saying, this is just who I am because of what happened to me. What happened to you was real, but healing asks, who will you become in spite of it? You may have been abandoned. It does not mean everyone will leave. You may have been betrayed. It does not mean trust is foolish. You may have failed. It does not mean you're a failure. You may have lost years. It does not mean the years ahead are worthless. You may have made decisions that caused real damage. It does not mean redemption is not possible. But you can decide what happens next. So you have to turn your past into evidence against yourself. Every time a new opportunity comes, you remember why you are unqualified. Every time someone tries to love you, you remember why you are difficult to love. Every time God calls you forward, you remember why you do not deserve to go. You have become the prosecutor in your own trial. You present the evidence, you repeat the accusations, you remind yourself of every mistake, and then you hand yourself the harshest possible sentence. But God is not asking you to pretend the past did not happen. God is asking you to stop worshiping it. Stop giving it more authority than grace. Stop allowing yesterday to veto tomorrow. Your past can be a teacher. It cannot remain your master. The other thing you must leave behind is the need for everyone to understand you. Some of you are exhausted because you keep trying to explain yourself to people who have already decided not to understand. You believe that if you just find the right words, they will finally see your heart. If you explain the situation one more time, they will admit that they are wrong. If you defend yourself carefully enough, the rumor will stop. If you prove your intentions, people will give you the benefit of the doubt. But some people do not want clarity. They want confirmation of the story they have chosen. They need you to remain the villain because admitting the truth would require them to confront themselves. And you can waste years trying to earn a fair hearing from people who benefit from misunderstanding you. There's a difference between healthy communication and endless self-defense. Healthy communication seeks understanding. Endless self-defense begs for permission to exist. You do not need to respond to every accusation. You do not need to correct every rumor. You don't need to attend every argument you were invited to attend. You don't need to prove your heart to people committed to misreading it. Sometimes silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is a boundary. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Let your life speak. Let your consistency speak. Let your integrity speak. Let time reveal what explanation never could. You have a limited amount of energy. Do not spend all of it trying to change the minds of people who are determined to keep the wrong opinion. You must also leave behind the idea that being needed is the same as being loved. This is one difficult because many people have spent their lives earning connection through usefulness. People call when they need money. People call when they need advice. They call when they need transportation. They call when they're in a crisis. They call when they need you to fix something. And because they call, you tell yourself that you're important to them. But do they call when they do not need anything? Do they ask how you are? Do they show up when you're struggling? Do they celebrate when you succeed? Do they respect you when you say no? Do they make space for your needs? Or is your relationship entirely built around what you provide? Being needed can feel like love, but sometimes it is only dependence. Sometimes people do not value you. They value access to what you do for them. And the moment you stop doing it, their affection disappears. That truth hurts, but it also frees you. You do not have to buy belonging with exhaustion. You don't have to rescue everyone in order to justify your place in their lives. You don't have to solve every problem to prove your worth. You deserve relationships where your presence matters even when your performance does not. relationships where you are not only contacted during emergencies, relationships where you can be weak, relationships where you can ask for help, relationships where where no is respected, relationships where love does not come with an invoice. Leave behind the belief that you must constantly prove your usefulness to deserve care. You must leave behind guilt for choosing yourself when choosing yourself is necessary. There's a selfish way to live. We know that. There are people who think only about themselves. They ignore responsibility. They use people. They refuse sacrifice. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who have been taught that every act of self-preservation is selfish. They feel guilty for resting. They feel guilty for saying no. They feel guilty for taking time away. They're guilty for not answering the phone, guilty for refusing to lend money they do not have, guilty for any relationship that is harming them, guilty for taking care of their body, guilty for protecting their peace, guilty for having needs at all. You are allowed to care for yourself. You're allowed to consider your own well-being. You're allowed to stop carrying responsibilities that were never yours. You're allowed to recognize that you cannot pour endlessly from an empty life. You are not required to destroy yourself to prove that you love others. Sometimes choosing yourself is not rejection. It is survival. Sometimes choosing yourself is the only way to preserve the strength necessary to continue serving at all. Jesus said to love your neighbor as yourself, not instead of yourself, not while hating yourself, not while neglecting yourself, as yourself. You are included in the command to love. And some of you must leave behind the habit of calling chaos passion. You have become so accustomed to instability that peace feels boring. You associate love with anxiety. You associate attraction with uncertainty. You associate excitement with emotional danger. When someone is consistent, you assume there is no spark. When someone communicates clearly, you lose interest. When someone respects your boundaries, you wonder whether they care enough. But when someone disappears, returns, confuses you, provokes jealousy, and keeps you emotionally off balance, you call it passion. It's not always passion. Sometimes it is a nervous system responding to unpredictability. There's the weather alert. So we don't know how that weather alert on our service here because it's usually after 6:30. All right, we'll let that go. Never a dull moment, folks. Actually, our show ends at 6:30. Now we have a 2-hour special. I forgot all about the weather alert going off. Service each Wednesday between 10 a.m. and between 6 and 8 p.m. If there is a threat of severe weather, the test will be postponed to the next available good weather day. Reception of this broadcast. I'm sorry, folks. Just a second. Greater distances from the transmitter can occur even though you are using a good quality receiver in good working order. Come on. The warning alarm sound will be activated for hazardous watches and warnings for the following counties: Collin, Dallas, Benton, Ellis, Hill, Hood, Hunt, Kaufman, Parker, Rockwall, and Tarrant. This concludes the weather radio station East C56. Okay. But when someone disappears, returns, or confuses you, provokes jealousy, and keeps you emotionally off balance, you call it passion. That is not always passion. Sometimes it is a nervous system responding to unpredictability. Sometimes what you call chemistry is familiarity with dysfunction. If love always requires you to chase, guess, beg, compete, and recover, you need to ask what you learned to call love. Healthy love may not give you the same emotional high as chaos, but it gives you something better. Safety, consistency, respect, trust, room to breathe. You should not have to constantly earn reassurance from someone who claims to care about you. You should not have to decode basic communication. You do not have to live in fear that one mistake will cause them to disappear. Leave behind the belief that suffering is proof of depth. Pain does not automatically make a relationship meaningful. Difficulty does not automatically make it worth saving. And history does not automatically make it healthy. You must leave behind the fantasy that someone will eventually become who you need them to be. People can change. Grace allows change. Growth is real. Redemption is real. But you cannot build your life around potential while ignoring reality. You cannot love the person someone might become so deeply that you refuse to see who they are today. You keep saying they could be wonderful if they would just stop lying, if they would just help, if they would just become consistent, if they would just take responsibility, if they would just stop hurting you. But what are they choosing now? Not what have they promised, not what do they say after the damage, not what do you imagine, not what are they, not what is a potential. What are they consistently choosing? Potential is not a promise. Love does not require you to wait indefinitely for someone to become safe. You cannot force someone to heal. You cannot love someone who into taking responsibility. You cannot sacrifice enough to create change in a person who refuses it. You can support, you can encourage, you can pray, you can tell the truth, but they must choose. And while you wait for their choice, you still have choices of your own. You must leave behind the excuse that you are waiting on God when God may be waiting on you. Some prayers have already been answered with instruction. You asked for direction and the answer was clear, but you didn't like it. You asked for peace and God showed you what had to end, but you wanted peace without loss. You asked for change and God showed you what had to change, had to be confronted, but you wanted transformation without discomfort. You asked for a new opportunity and one appeared, but it required courage. So you said you needed another sign. There comes a moment when seeking confirmation becomes avoidance. You don't need 20 signs to obey one clear truth. You don't need another sermon. You don't need another inspirational quote. You don't need another person to tell you what you already know. You need to move. God may not give you the details for an entire journey, but you have enough information for the next step. Take it. You must leave behind perfectionism disguised as preparation. Some of you never begin because you are always getting ready. You need more information, more money, more confidence, more experience, a better plan, a better time, a better body, a better schedule, a better opportunity. You tell yourself you are being responsible, but sometimes you're just hiding. Preparation matters, wisdom matters, planning matters, but perfectionism often pretends to be wisdom while protecting you from risk. Because if you never start, you never have to fail publicly. If you never release the work, nobody can criticize it. If you never apply, nobody can reject you. If you never love openly, nobody can break your heart. If you never try, you can continue believing you might have succeeded. Potential feels safer than participation, but unused potential eventually becomes regret. The first version may not be perfect. Do it anyway. The first attempt may fail. Learn from it. You may be embarrassed. You'll survive. You may have to adjust. You may not become ready. You do not become ready by thinking about the journey forever. You become ready by taking the journey. Leave behind the need to be perfect before you are willing to be present. You must leave behind the fear of disappointing people. You will disappoint people. Let us tell the truth. You cannot live honestly without disappointing someone. When you set a boundary, someone who benefited from your lack of boundaries will be disappointed. When you stop saying yes to everything, someone will be disappointed. When you change, someone who preferred you will be disappointed. When you choose your calling, someone who had a different plan for your life may be disappointed. When you speak truth, someone invested in silence will be disappointed. When you leave an unhealthy situation, someone may call you selfish. When you refuse manipulation, someone may call you cruel. Disappointment is not always evidence that you did something wrong. Sometimes it is evidence that you are no longer living entirely for other people. You're responsible for being honest. You're responsible for being respectful. You're responsible for examining your motives, but you are not responsible for making every person happy with your decision. That is impossible. Some people will only be satisfied if you abandon yourself. Their satisfaction is too expensive. You must leave behind the need to win every argument. Not every disagreement requires victory. Not every false statement requires correction. Not every person is reachable through debate. Sometimes peace is more valuable than the last word. Ask yourself what you are trying to accomplish. Are you trying to understand? Are you trying to be understood? Are you trying to solve something? Or are you simply trying to prove that you are right? There are moments when truth must be defended. There are moments when silence enables harm. But there are also arguments that continue only because two people value pride more than peace. You may be right and still be destructive in the way you communicate it. You may have facts and still lack wisdom. You may win the argument and lose the relationship. You may prove your point and damage your credibility. Maturity knows when to speak. Maturity also knows when the conversation is no longer productive. Leave behind the belief that walking away means you lost. Sometimes walking away means you finally recognize there was nothing worth winning. You must leave behind resentment that has become part of your identity. You were hurt. You were wronged. Something was taken from you. Someone failed you. Someone lied. Someone betrayed your trust. You have every right to name what happened. You have every right to grieve. You have every right to seek accountability. But resentment can become a prison in which the person who harmed you no longer has to be present. They move on. They sleep. They laugh. They live. And you carry them into every room. You replay the conversation. You imagine what you should have said. You build arguments with someone who is not there. You relive the injury until it becomes new every day. Forgiveness is not saying the harm was acceptable. It is saying the harm will not control the rest of your life. It is refusing to allow someone else's worst choice to become your permanent identity. It may take time. It may require help. It may happen in layers. But you deserve freedom from what they did. Do not confuse holding pain with honoring what happened. You don't have to remain wounded to prove that the wound was real. You must leave behind shame, not responsibility, shame. Responsibility says, I did something wrong and I need to make it right. Shame says, I am wrong and I can never be made right. Responsibility leads to change. Shame leads to hiding. Responsibility acknowledges harm. Shame makes healing feel impossible. There are things you need to apologize for. There may be consequences you must face. There may be truth that must be rebuilt, trust that must be rebuilt. There may be damage that cannot be completely repaired, but shame will not help you repair it. Shame keeps the focus on how terrible you feel rather than on what needs to change. You cannot rewrite yesterday, but you can become a person who does not repeat it. That is how you honor the lesson. That is how you demonstrate repentance, not by hating yourself forever, by living differently. Leave behind the version of faith that tells you God only wants you when you are flawless. If perfection were the requirement, none of us would be here. Grace is not permission to continue harm. Grace is the opportunity to become different. You must leave behind the expectation that healing will make you exactly who you were before. Some experiences change you. You may not return to the person you were, and perhaps you're not supposed to. The goal is not always restoration of the old version. Sometimes the goal is transformation into someone wiser, stronger, more discerning, more compassionate, more honest. You may miss who you were before the loss, before the betrayal, before the diagnosis, before the addiction, before the trauma, before what that person did not know, what you now know. You cannot unknow it. You cannot return completely, but you can move forward. Healing does not always mean becoming untouched. It means becoming whole while acknowledging the scar. The scar remains evidence that something happened, but it's also evidence that the wound closed. Do not judge your healing by whether you feel exactly as you once did. You're not going backwards. You're becoming someone who can carry the truth without being crushed by it. You must leave behind relationships sustained only by history. Some people remain connected because they have known each other a long time. That history matters. Shared memories matter. Loyalty matters. But length does not automatically mean health. You can know someone for 20 years and still be unable to trust them. You can share a childhood and no longer share values. You can love someone and recognize the relationship has become harmful. You can be grateful for what a person once meant and admit that who you are now can no longer remain close to who they have chosen to become. Not every old relationship must end, but every relationship should be examined honestly. Does it support growth? Is there mutual respect? Can truth be spoken? Can both people change? Or are you required to remain frozen in an old role? Some people do not want to know who you are now. They want the version of you they could control. They remind you consistently of old mistakes. They mock your growth. They become uncomfortable when you gain confidence. They call your healing arrogance because your pain once made you easier to manage. History deserves respect. It does not reserve unlimited power. You must leave behind false humility. False humility is not the same as being humble. False humility denies gifts in order to make other people comfortable. It says, I'm not good at anything. It minimizes accomplishment. It rejects compliments. It pretends to know what God has placed within you. Sometimes you were taught that confidence was pride. So you learn to shrink. You learn to apologize for your voice. You learn to hide your ability. You learn to step back while less prepared people step forward. Humility is not pretending you have no gifts. Humility is understanding the source and purpose of those gifts. You can know you are talented and remain humble. You can acknowledge your strength and remain teachable. You can walk confidently without believing you are better than everyone else. You do not honor God by burying what God gave you. Leave behind the need to make yourself smaller so insecure people can feel larger. You must leave behind the lie that is too late. But you must leave behind the lie that it is too late. Too late for what? Too late to begin, too late to apologize, too late to heal, too late to learn, too late to solve, too late to serve, too late to become honest. There may be opportunities that have passed. There may be choices you cannot undo. But as long as you're alive, it's not too late to make the next decision better. You may not have the same future you would have had 20 years ago, but you still have a future. It may look different. It may require humility. It may begin with very small steps, but small steps still move. You're not disqualified because you're older. You're not disqualified because you're starting over. You're not disqualified because others began sooner. Your timeline is not a moral failure. Stop comparing the beginning of your next chapter to the middle of somebody else's. You must leave behind the belief that struggle makes you weak. Some of the strongest people you know are struggling privately. Strength is not ever falling apart. Strength is not knowing when to ask for help. Strength is knowing when to ask for help. Strength is admitting when you're tired. Strength is telling the truth before the crisis grows. Strength is returning to recovery after a setback. Strength is making the appointment. Strength is taking the medication. Strength is saying, I cannot do this alone. The image of the endlessly strong person has destroyed many people. They become so committed to appearing capable that no one knows they are drowning. They smile, they work, they serve, they encourage others. Inside, they're disappearing. You don't have to wait until collapse to become honest. There's no prize for suffering silently. There's no holiness in refusing support. God created community because human beings were not designed to carry everything alone. You must leave behind the habit of abandoning yourself to keep others. How often have you remained silent because you were afraid someone would leave? How often have you accepted disrespect? How often have you ignored your intuition? How often have you changed your personality, your needs, your values, or your boundaries to maintain a connection? You kept them, but you lost yourself. And every time you abandon yourself to prevent someone else from abandoning you, you reinforce the belief that their presence is more valuable than your integrity. A relationship that requires your disappearance is not love. A community that requires silence about your truth is not belonging. A faith that requires you to hate the person God created you to be is not liberation. You are not required to betray yourself in order to be accepted. Those who genuinely love you may challenge you. They may disagree. They may tell you truths you don't want to hear, but they will not require you to become invisible. You must leave behind the expectation that closure will always come from the person who hurt you. You may never receive the apology. You may never hear the full truth. You may never understand why. They may deny everything. They may rewrite the story. They may die before the conversation happens. They may simply refuse accountability. If your healing depends entirely on their cooperation, then they still control your future. Closure is not always a conversation. Sometimes closure accepting that the conversation will never happen. Sometimes closure is believing that their behavior already demonstrated. Sometimes closure is deciding that you no longer need another explanation for a pattern you have seen but repeatedly. Sometimes closure is choosing peace without permission. You can grieve the apology you deserved and never received. You can mourn the relationship you thought was possible, but you can still move. You must leave behind the idea that God's will always looks impressive. Sometimes God's will looks like a quiet life. Sometimes it looks like caring for one person. Sometimes it looks like starting over privately. Sometimes it looks like a small congregation, a small business, a small home, a life that never goes viral. Do not measure purpose by visibility. Do not confuse fame with impact. Do not confuse of audience size with faithfulness. Some of the most important work in the world happens without applause. A parent raises a child. A friend answers the phone. A volunteer serves a meal. A caregiver sits beside someone who is afraid. A pastor speaks hope to a room that may never be full. A person in recovery tells the truth to one struggling newcomer. That matters. Do not abandon your calling because it does not look impressive enough for social media. You must leave behind the need to know the entire plan. You are not going to know everything. You may not know how the next chapter ends. You may not know who will remain. You may not know where the resources will come from. You may not know how long the transition will take. Faith does not require certainty about the outcome. It requires trust for the next step. You spent too much time asking for a map when God is offering a lamp. A lamp does not show you the entire road. It shows you enough to move. Take the next step you can see. Then the next one will become visible. Some of you are demanding clarity that Movement alone can provide. You want to know whether you can handle the journey before the journey has had a chance to strengthen you. You want to know whether the bridge will hold while refusing to step onto it. At some point, you have to trust. And finally, you must leave behind the old version of yourself that believes survival is all you deserved. You have survived so much, and survival deserves honor. But survival is not the final destination. You're not here only to endure one crisis after another. You're not here only to make it through another day. You're not here only to pay bills, solve problems, and recover from the latest disappointment. There is more. There is joy. There is purpose. There is peace. There is connection. There is creativity. There is laughter. There is service. There is rest. There is love that does not require suffering. There is life beyond constant emergency. You may not know how to live without crisis because crisis has become familiar for so long. When everything becomes calm, you may create a new problem simply because the calm feels unsafe. But you can learn peace. You can learn stability. You can learn to receive good things without waiting for them to disappear. You can learn to live instead of merely bracing yourself for the next blow. The next chapter becomes room. The next chapter requires room. You cannot carry every old wound, every old belief, every old pattern, and every old identity across the threshold. Some things must be set down, not because they never mattered, not because they were not real, not because they have completed their purpose, but because they have completed their purpose. So I want you to ask yourself now, what am I carrying that I no longer need? What am I defending that is destroying me? What am I repeating because it is unfamiliar? Because it is familiar. What am I afraid to release? What approval am I still trying to earn? What apology am I waiting for? What past version of myself am I trying to revive? What lie about my worth am I still believing? What relationship survives only because I'm afraid to let go? What excuse has protected me from responsibility? What pain has become part of my identity? What must remain in this chapter? You do not need to announce it publicly. You do not need to explain it to everyone, but you need to name it honestly. Because you cannot release what you refuse to identify. Say it to yourself. Write it down. Pray about it. Speak it to someone you trust, but name it. This cannot come with me. The resentment cannot come with me. The shame cannot come with me. The excuse cannot come with me. The unhealthy relationship cannot come with me in its current form. The need for approval cannot come with me. The fear of failure cannot come with me. The belief that I am unworthy cannot come with me. The version of me that accepts crumbs cannot come with me. The habit of abandoning myself cannot come with me. The idea that it is too late cannot come with me. Release does not always happen in one moment. Some things must be released repeatedly. You may choose freedom today and feel the old pull tomorrow. Choose freedom again. You may set the boundary and then feel guilty. Keep the boundary. You may decide to forgive and then feel anger return. Continue the work. You may walk away and still miss them. Keep walking. Missing something does not mean you made the wrong decision. Feeling uncomfortable does not mean you should return. Growth often feels unfamiliar before it feels peaceful. Do not run back to the prison because freedom feels strange. You prayed for this opening. You asked for another chance. You said you want to change. Now you must stop negotiating what you already must end. There are doors God will not force you to close. There are burdens God will not rip from your hands. There are patterns God will expose, but you must decide whether to continue them. Grace gives you the strength, but you must make the choice. This is not rejection of your story. It is respect for your future. You're saying, I honor what I survived, but I will not live there forever. You're saying, I learned from this, but I will not repeat it. You're saying, I can appreciate what was good without returning to what became harmful. You're saying, I forgive myself for not knowing then what I know now. You're saying, I'm ready to make room. Because in the next section, we're going to talk about what you must carry forward. You're not entering the next chapter empty-handed. There are lessons, strengths, truths, and commitments that belonged with you. You're leaving behind what imprisoned you, but you're carrying forward what prepared you. Wow. I'm hoping I'm going to get all this in this week. This is season finale. I got to finish it. All right. Let's take one more quick break, and then we'll come back and see if I can get through the end of this here. Get all this out to you. Let's see what I got here for you. Yeah. What did I do with that thing? Hold just a second. I put an ad in here. It's not here. Yeah, that figures. That's okay. No, this is it right. This is it right here. Here we go. We're right back, folks. Something new is on the air at the Zoo Radio Network. New shows, new conversations, more music, more inspiration, and more reasons to listen all week long. Start your week with Mark Zorn Music Monday, every Monday night from 7 until 11. 4 hours of songs, remixes, stories, and music from yours truly, Mark Zorn. Then be inspired and empowered with life lessons with Bishop Mark. Real experiences, honest conversations, practical wisdom, and lessons designed to help you live stronger, move forward, and become the person you were created to be. And when the rest of the world starts winding down, the zoo is just getting started. Stay up with Zoo Late Night every Tuesday and Friday. More music, fewer interruptions, unexpected favorites, and the perfect soundtrack for your late night hours. Music, talk, faith, entertainment. It is all here on the Zoo Radio Network. Listen now at thezue.net. The Zoo Radio Network, music in motion, faith that inspires. Okay, we're back. That was a quick one. We got about 30 minutes left, so I got to move quickly here, folks. Here we go. What you must carry forward. I'm out of breath. In fact, I got to do this. This is killing me. I know I had to look nice for the finale today and everything, but it's killing me. You got to go. Okay. Head off. There we go. Whew. You cannot carry everything into the next chapter. That does not mean you can enter it empty-handed. There are things that the season gave you that belong in your future. There are lessons you paid for. There is wisdom that you came through pain. There's strength you discovered only because life demanded it. There are truths you now know that you did not know before. There are prayers that change you even when they did not immediately change your circumstances. There are boundaries you learn to set. There are people who proved they were trustworthy. There are parts of yourself you finally stopped hiding. There's faith that became stronger because it survived questions. You're not beginning again as the same person who began the last chapter. You may feel as though you're starting over, but you're not starting from nothing. You're starting from experience. You're starting from survival. You're starting from wisdom. You're starting from a deeper understanding of yourself. You're starting with proof that you have already made it through things you once believed would destroy you. So now what we have talked about, what must remain behind, let us talk about what must come with you. First thing you must carry forward is the truth about who you are, not who people said you were, not who your mistakes convinced you that you were, not who fear required you to become, not who you pretended to be so that you would be accepted, who you are now. What do you believe? What matters to you? What values will guide you? What are you no longer willing to betray? You have spent enough time adjusting yourself to fit places that were never designed to hold your truth. The next chapter cannot be built upon self-denial. You cannot create a meaningful life while constantly hiding from it. Carry forward the courage to be honest about your identity, honest about your needs, honest about your limitations, honest about your gifts, honest about your mistakes, honest about your dreams, honest about what hurts, honest about what no longer works. Some people may not understand the truth of who you are. It does not make it less true. Some people may reject you. That rejection may hurt deeply. But rejection for being honest is still less destructive than acceptance that requires you to disappear. Carry forward your full self. Not the polished version, not the public version, not the version designed to make everyone comfortable. The real version, the growing version, the imperfect version, the version God already knows. You must carry forward discernment. Discernment is different from suspicion. Suspicion assumes everyone is dangerous. Discernment pays attention. It notices patterns. It listens to words. But it also watches behavior. It does not ignore discomfort simply because someone offers a pleasant explanation. It does not call every warning sign judgment. It does not allow loneliness to make every person appear safe. You've learned things. Use what you've learned. If somebody repeatedly disrespects boundaries, believe the pattern. If someone only changes when consequences arrive, pay attention. If words and behavior constantly contradict one another, trust the behavior. If you leave every interaction feeling confused, diminished, ashamed, or exhausted, ask why. Discernment does not require you to assume the worst. It requires you to stop ignoring what is consistently visible. Some of you have called yourselves compassionate when what you were really doing was explaining away repeated harm. You said they had a difficult childhood. That may be true. You said they are under stress. That may be true. You said they do not mean it. That may be true. But explanations are not the same as excuses. Someone's pain may explain their behavior. It does not obligate you to continue receiving the damage. Carry compassion, but carry discernment with it. Compassion without discernment can become self-destruction. Discernment without compassion can become cruelty. You need both. You must carry forward boundaries to protect what God is rebuilding. A boundary is not a wall around your heart. It is a gate. A gate decides what enters. A gate can open. A gate can close. A gate allows access where trust has been established. A gate limits access where harm has been demonstrated. You need boundaries because not everyone deserves the same level of access. Everyone may deserve dignity. Everybody may deserve dignity. Everybody does not deserve intimacy. Everybody may deserve kindness. Everybody does not deserve your private information. Everybody may deserve forgiveness. Everybody does not deserve another opportunity to hurt you. Carry forward the ability to say, no, I cannot do that. That does not work for me. I am not comfortable with this. I need time. I will continue this conversation I will not continue this conversation while I'm being distracted. I care about you, but I cannot carry this for you. I forgive you, but trust will take time. I love you, but this relationship must change. You don't need to turn every boundary into a courtroom argument. You don't need to write a discernment every time you say no. You do not need to persuade someone to approve of the limit you're setting. The boundary is not a negotiation over whether your needs are real. Carry forward the courage to protect your peace before everything falls apart. Do not wait until you're furious. Do not wait until resentment has taken over. Do not wait until the relationship is beyond repair. Speak earlier. Speak clearly. Speak honestly. You must carry forward the lessons hidden inside your mistakes. Some people carry the shame, but leave the wisdom behind. They remember what they did wrong. They remember the embarrassment. They remember the regret, but they fail to carry the lesson. That means the pain was suffered without being used. That means pain was suffered without being used. Do not waste the mistake. Learn from it. What did it reveal? Did it reveal you moved too quickly? Did it reveal that you ignore warning signs? Did it reveal that you make decisions from loneliness? Did it reveal that pride prevents you from asking for help? Did it reveal that you confuse being wanted with being valued? Did it reveal that you avoid difficult conversations until the damage grows? Did it reveal that you do not trust yourself? Did it reveal that you keep placing yourself in situations where the same outcome becomes likely? You cannot change what happened, but you can refuse to repeat it unconsciously. Carry the lesson. Leave the shame. Carry the wisdom. Leave the self-hatred. Carry the responsibility. Leave behind the belief that you are beyond redemption. There's no honor in suffering the same lesson endlessly because you are ashamed to examine. You must carry forward the confidence that comes from having survived. Think about what you have already made it through. Think about the nights you believed you would not survive emotionally. Think about the news you did not know how to process. Think about the people you lost. Think about the money problems. Think about the health problems. Think about the addiction. Think about the relapse. Think about the grief. Think about the humiliation. Think about the doors that closed. Think about the times you had to start again. You are still there. Do not reduce that to luck. You participated in your survival. You got out of bed. You answered the call. You asked for help. You showed up. You kept breathing. You made another decision. You endured one more day. You may not have done it perfectly. You may have complained. You may have fallen apart. You may have made mistakes along the way, but you kept going, and that matters. Carry forward the evidence that you can survive hard things. When the next challenges come, do not pretend you have never faced difficulty before. Remember, you have been afraid before. You have moved away. You have been uncertain before. You figured out how the next step. You've been broken before. You healed enough to continue. You've been lost before. You found direction. Your survival is not proof that you will never struggle again. It's a proof that struggle does not automatically mean defeat. You must carry forward a willingness to ask for help sooner. There's nothing noble about waiting until everything collapses. Some of us were raised to believe that strong people handle everything alone. We were taught that asking for help was weakness. We were taught not to burden anyone. We were taught to smile, to stay quiet, to figure it out, to keep going. And then we wonder why people discover our pain only after it's become a crisis. Carry forward a new understanding of strength. Strength says, I'm not doing well. Strength says, I need support. Strength says, I do not know how to solve this. Strength says, can you sit with me? Strength says, I need treatment. Strength says, I need recovery. Strength says, I cannot be alone tonight. Strength says, I need someone to help me carry this. You do not have to tell everybody everything. Wisdom still matters, but find safe people. Find people who can hear the truth without turning it into gossip. Find people who do not make every conversation about themselves. Find people who will tell you the truth without humiliating you. Find people who can pray with you and also help you take practical action. Find people who will not disappear when your situation becomes inconvenient. And when you find them, let them help. You cannot complain that nobody is there if you refuse to tell anyone that you need them. Carry forward the humility to be supported. You must carry forward consistency. Your life will be transformed by one emotional night, will not be transformed by one emotional night. The program may inspire you. A sermon may change you. A prayer may move you. You may make a strong decision, but the next chapter will be built through consistency. Small actions repeated. Choices made when the emotion has faded. Commitments kept when nobody is watching. You do not become healthy because you made one healthy choice. You become healthier by continuing to make them. You don't rebuild trust with one apology. You rebuild it through consistency, consistent honesty. You do not create financial stability with one good week. You create it through repeated discipline. You do not deepen faith through one powerful prayer. You deepen it by returning to God again and again. You do not become reliable by making promises. You become reliable by keeping them. Consistency is not exciting. That's why many people avoid it. They love beginnings, new plans, new notebooks, new promises, new relationships, new years, new seasons. They can become bored with repetition. Yet, repetition is where transformation lives. The person you become is largely determined by what you repeatedly do. Not what you occasionally intend, not what you emotionally promise, what you repeatedly do. Carry forward the commitment to keep going after the excitement disappears. You must carry forward the courage to begin imperfectly. Do not wait until you feel completely confident. Confidence often comes after action. Do not wait until every detail is resolved. Some details can only be resolved through movement. Do not wait until nobody can criticize you. That day will never come. Trust me. Do not wait until failure is impossible. Anything meaningful carries risk. Begin with what you have. Begin where you are. Begin with learning. Begin while afraid. Begin while the plan is still developing. You can adjust some things that exist. You cannot improve what you refuse to begin. Carry forward the willingness to look inexperienced, the willingness to ask questions, the willingness to make corrections, the willingness to say, I do not know yet. You do not have to appear perfect. You have to remain teachable. You must carry forward faith that can survive uncertainty. Many people have faith, believe faith means certainty. It does not. Faith often exists precisely because certainty is unavailable. Faith says, I do not know, but I will trust. Faith says, I cannot see the outcome, but I will take the next faithful step. Faith says, I have questions, but I'm not abandoning God because I have questions. Faith says, this does not make sense, but I will not assume that confusion means absence. Some of you have been ashamed of your questions. Do not be. A faith that has never been questioned may simply be inherited habit. Questions can deepen faith. Struggle can mature it. Doubt can force you to examine what you truly believe. You do not need to pretend certainty. Carry forward honesty with God. Tell God when you're confused. Tell God when you're angry. Tell God when you're disappointed. Tell God when you're afraid. Prayer is not performance. God does not need a polished version of your pain. God already knows. Bring the truth. You must carry forward gratitude without denial. Gratitude does not mean pretending life is perfect. It does not mean ignoring injustice. It does not mean denying grief. It does not mean forcing yourself to feel happy. Gratitude is the ability to recognize what remains good, even while something hurts. You can grieve and be grateful. You can be disappointed and still notice grace. You can want change and still appreciate what is present. You can acknowledge pain without allowing pain to erase every blessing. Carry forward the practice of noticing. Notice who stayed. Notice what worked. Notice the prayer that was answered differently than you expected. Notice the strength you developed. Notice the meal, the call, the place to sleep, the moment of peace, the person who made you laugh, the opportunity that seemed small but mattered. Gratitude does not remove difficulty. It prevents difficulty from becoming the only thing you see. You must carry forward compassion for the person you used to be. You know more now. That makes it easy to judge the version of you who did not know. You look back and say, how could I have stayed? How could I have believed that? How could I have made that choice? How could I have ignored the signs? But the person you were then did not have the wisdom you have now. They were making decisions with tools available at the time. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they were lonely. Maybe they were addicted. Maybe they were trying to survive. Maybe they had never experienced healthy love. Maybe they were repeating what they had been taught. This does not excuse harm, but it creates understanding. You cannot heal yourself by bullying your past self. Carry forward compassion. Speak to the person you were the way you would speak to someone else who had survived the same thing. Say, you deserve better. You were doing what you knew. You made mistakes. You caused harm, but you are allowed to learn. You're allowed to make amends. You're allowed to become different. Self-compassion is not self-indulgence. It creates enough safety for honesty. When you hate yourself, you hide. When you understand yourself, you can confront what needs to be changed. You must carry forward accountability. Compassion without accountability becomes excuse-making. You are not responsible for everything that happened to you, but you are responsible for what you do with it now. You're responsible for the way your wounds affect other people. You're responsible for seeking help. You're responsible for the choices you make when you're no better. You're responsible for apologizing when you cause harm. You're responsible for changing behavior, not just explaining it. Carry forward the ability to say, I was wrong. Not, I'm sorry you felt that way. Not, I only did it because you. Not every mistake, everybody makes mistakes. Say, I was wrong. I hurt you. I understand why trust was damaged. I will not demand immediate forgiveness. I'm going to show change through what I do next. Accountability does not reduce you. It matures you. People who cannot admit fault cannot grow. People who blame everyone else remain trapped. Carry forward the courage to examine yourself without destroying yourself. You must carry forward joy, not shallow happiness, not pretending joy. The kind of joy that survives difficulty, the kind of joy that says life still contains beauty. Some of you have felt guilty for enjoying anything because someone else is suffering. You feel guilty laughing while grieving. You feel guilty resting while work remains. You feel guilty celebrating progress because you are not yet where you want to be. But joy is not betrayal. You can miss someone and still laugh. You can be healing and still celebrate. You can be concerned about the world and still enjoy the people you love. You can have unfinished problems and still experience a good day. Do not postpone all joy until life is perfect. You will wait forever. Carry forward permission to live now. Eat the meal. Play the music. Take the walk. Celebrate the small victory. Spend time with people who make your soul lighter. Create something. Dance badly. Laugh loudly. Rest without earning it through exhaustion. Joy is not a denial of suffering. Sometimes joy is resistance. It is a declaration that pain will not consume every part of you. You must carry forward a commitment to love in action. This ministry is built on love, but love cannot remain a slogan. Carry it into the next chapter through what you do. Check on somebody, feed somebody, encourage somebody, forgive where forgiveness is possible. Set a boundary where love requires truth. Welcome the person others ignore. Listen before you advise. Offer dignity. Refuse cruelty. Speak against injustice. Do not use religion as a weapon. Do not reduce people to their worst moment. Do not demand that everyone become like you before you decide they deserve compassion. Carry forward the understanding that love can be gentle and still be strong. Love can say yes. Love can say no. Love can embrace. Love can confront. Love can forgive. Love can leave. Love can stay. Love can tell the truth. Love is not always comfortable, but love should never require dehumanization. You must carry forward people who have proven they can walk with you. Not everyone belongs in the next chapter, but some do. Do not become so confused on who hurt you that you fail to value who stayed, who answered, who showed up, who told you the truth, who supported your growth, who respected your boundaries, who did not disappear when you had nothing to offer, who celebrated without competing, who corrected without humiliating, who gave you the space without abandoning you. Carry those relationships carefully. Do not assume good people know what they mean to you. Tell them, thank them, support them, make room for their needs. Do not treat loyal people casually while chasing approval from unavailable ones. Some of us spend enormous time trying to convince people to love us while neglecting those who already do. Carry forward mutual relationships, not perfect relationships. There are no perfect people. The relationships where effort flows in both directions, where truth is safe, where repair is possible, where love is not measured only by one person's sacrifice. You must carry forward the ability to rest, not escape. Rest. Rest is not the absence of purpose. Rest protects purpose. During this summer break, do not simply fill every empty space with another responsibility. Allow quiet, allow reflection, allow your mind to slow down, allow your body to recover, allow your spirit to listen. You may discover how exhausted you are only after you stop. That is all right. Do not rush to become productive again. I'm running out of breath here, trying to rush here. We're not going to make it, folks. Rest may feel uncomfortable if you have built your identity around constant motion. You may feel guilty. You may feel restless. You may feel unnecessary. Sit with that. Ask your value, as your value disappears, ask why your value disappears in your mind when your activity stops. God does not love you only when you're useful. Your worth is not on a time clock. Carry forward rhythms of rest so you do not return to the next season already empty. You must carry forward curiosity. Curiosity allows growth. It says, maybe I do not know everything. Maybe there's another perspective. Maybe I should listen before I decide. Maybe the person I disagree with has a story I have never considered. Curiosity does not mean abandoning conviction. It means remaining teachable. Rigid people stop growing because every new idea feels like a threat. Carry forward questions. Read, listen to people outside your usual circle. Examine your assumptions. Allow God to surprise you. The path may not look exactly as you expected. Do not miss it because you are only willing to recognize one form. You must carry forward hope that is grounded in truth. Hope is not pretending everything will work exactly as you want. Hope is not making promises God did not make. Hope is not denying risk. Hope says, even if this does not unfold the way I planned, life can still hold meaning. Hope says, this ending does not mean every good thing has ended. Hope says, I can be disappointed without becoming hopeless. Hope says, there are possibilities I cannot yet see. Hope says, God can still work with what remains. Carry forward realistic hope, the kind that prepares, the kind that acts, the kind that grieves when necessary, the kind that keeps the heart open without ignoring wisdom. You must carry forward your voice. Some of you found your voice during the season. Do not lose it again. You spoke a truth. You named an injustice. You admitted a need. You told your story. You stopped apologizing for your existence. Carry that voice forward. Your voice does not have to be loud to be powerful. It has to be honest. There will be people who preferred you silent. There will be systems that benefited from your compliance. There will be relationships that become uncomfortable when you begin speaking clearly. Speak anyway, not recklessly, not cruelly, but courageously. Use your voice to advocate. Use it to encourage. Use it to tell the truth. Use it to ask for help. Use it to say no. Use it to say yes. Use it to tell people you love them before it's too late. Use it to apologize. Use it to pray. Use it to remind somebody that they matter. You must care for your capacity to begin again. This may not be your first new chapter. It may not be your last. Life involves many beginnings, some chosen, some forced, some exciting, some painful. You may not have to begin again. You may have to begin again more than once. Do not treat it as a failure. Beginning again means the story continues. You learn that you can survive things. You learn that you can trust beginnings. You do not know exactly who you will be at the end of the chapter. You simply need to be willing to enter it honestly, carrying forth the knowledge that identity is not frozen. You can change. You can mature. You can heal. You can reconsider. You can become more loving. You can become more disciplined. You become more powerful, peaceful. You become more honest, more faithful. You are not required to remain loyal to a version of yourself that no longer reflects what God is doing. Finally, carry forward the conviction that God is still present. God was present when you understood. God was present when you did not. God was present in the celebration. God was present in the grief. God was present when you prayed for answers. When your prayers were answered, God was present in the waiting. God was present when you felt strong. God was present when you barely held on. So the presence of God was not always dramatic. Sometimes it appeared through endurance. Sometimes through a person. Sometimes through an unexpected opportunity. Sometimes through a door that closed. Sometimes through the strength to say no. Sometimes through the courage to ask for help. Sometimes through the silence that forced you to listen. Carry forward the awareness that you do not enter the next chapter alone. You may feel alone. That feeling is real, but feeling alone and being abandoned are not the same thing. God is already present in places you have not yet reached. God is not waiting at the end of the road. God is present in the next step. So what will you carry? Carry truth, carry wisdom, carry boundaries, carry compassion, carry accountability, carry joy, carry rest, carry faith. Carry hope, carry the people who have proven they can walk beside you, carry the lesson, carry the evidence that you survived, carry your voice, carry your willingness to begin, but travel lighter. Do not drag every old wound behind you. Do not insist that the next chapter must pay for what happened to the last one. Do not punish new people for old betrayals. Do not reject new opportunities because old ones failed. Do not confuse wisdom with permanent fear. You can remember without being ruled by the memory. You can learn without becoming hardened. You can protect yourself without becoming unreachable. You can move carefully without refusing to move at all. The goal is not to enter the next chapter without scars. The goal is to enter it with scars that no longer control the direction. You are not empty-handed. You have more than you think. You have made it through every chapter that came before this one. You learned, you lost, you loved, you failed, you rose, you changed, you kept going. Now carry forward what made you wiser and leave behind what kept you bound. Because the next chapter is not only asking what you will release, it's asking what you will build. In the next section, we're not going to have a next section. Okay. In fact, what we're going to do is I'm going to summarize this up here. The next section is going to talk about what we know through this summer break. Okay. And it's very simple. Let's kind of get to the end of this section. I'll tell you exactly what it is. Because we're out of time. I mean, we were 2 hours and I didn't get it all in. It's a lot. It's a lot. I'm still going. Basically, what we're trying to do here, folks, is you want to take what was useful into the next chapter of your life, next chapter here, and leave the rest behind. Wow, there's a lot on this section. I didn't try that. It's been like 5 hours worth of work here. I can't talk that long. I'll be going crazy. Wow. I know I wrote this much. Oh, overachieving. Okay. The next section is about doing. Just get up and do it. Just take what you learn and do it. Wow. You know what? Here's what we're going to do. It's too much to finish it. So guess what, folks? We're going to have another episode. There's an executive meeting here, an executive special episode. Next Wednesday at 5:30 p.m., we will have Your Path Live with Mark, the final episode of the season. Sorry. I mean, it's just we're out of time. and I'm not going to be able to finish it. And there's a lot left that I want to get to you. This is important. So we'll be back after the 4th of July weekend here, and we'll come back next Wednesday and we'll just finish this up. If I can finish it in an hour, it might take 2 hours then too. In fact, it probably will. Let me continue this here. Yeah, it will take 2 hours. So next Wednesday, we'll have another 2-hour special. The real season finale of Your Path Live with Mark for the season. Lord have mercy. 1 second, we're almost there. Okay. I'm not going to even pray about all this. I'm going to say this. We've got about 3 minutes left, 2.5 minutes left. So I'm going to do this. Let's just bow your head and pray with me. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come together and look at our past and learn from it and become better people. Help us to continue to learn. Help us to grow. Help us to understand that we don't have to carry everything that we had into our future. Sometimes things need to be left behind. We cannot keep grasping for new things while holding on to the other things so tightly. Father, help us to take all this in. It was a lot. Help us to grow. Help us to trust you. Help us to trust the process, trust the next step, that we can see, that you offer that lamp so we can see the next step. We don't know the ending, but we can see the next step and the next and the next. Father, bring us back next week to finish this out for a special episode of Your Path Live with Bishop Mark, the final episode of the season. Father, we ask all this in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, folks, look, yeah. It would take another hour and a half probably to finish what I want to finish here. It's a lot, and I didn't mean for it to. I kind of overestimated my own abilities here to talk about it. So yeah, we'll come back next week, next Wednesday, special edition next Wednesday at 5:30. Your Path Live with Bishop Mark, the special extended version of the season finale. Oh boy. Sometimes you got to go with it. Sometimes plans are not always set in stone. So, folks, I'll say this. Until next week, next Wednesday, for Your Path Live with Bishop Mark, this was the season finale, but the season finale is going to be continued next week. So we'll see you next week at 5:30 p.m. right here where you're watching or listening right now for Your Path Live with Bishop Mark. Until then, folks, I say good night. Have a very, very safe 4th of July. You can really see me. Have a very, very safe 4th of July. And very, very happy weekend, very good week. And we'll see you next Wednesday. Start thinking about what we talked about today. If you need to rewatch it, rewatch it. Bye-bye, folks.
Thank you for joining us for Your Path Live with Bishop Mark. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. God bless you.